Chapter 5. After chaos among the peaches, the great sage steals the pills. In revolt against heaven, the gods capture the Monkey King. The story goes on to relate that the great sage equaling heaven, a mere monkey devil after all, was quite satisfied that his name was on the register of office without caring about the grading of his job and his own rank or the size of his salary. The immortal clerks in the two offices of his residence were in constant attendance on him. He had 3 meals a day and a bed to sleep on at night, and he lived a free and easy life without worries. In his spare time, he would visit the other palaces, get together with old friends, and make new ones. When he saw the 3 pure ones, he would address them as venerable, and when he met the 4 emperors, he called them Your Majesty. He was on fraternal terms with the 9 bright shiners, the generals of the 5 regions, the 28 constellations, the 4 great heavenly kings, the gods of the 12 branches, the 5 ancients of the 5 regions, the star ministers of the whole sky, and the countless gods of the Milky Way. Today he would wander east, and tomorrow he would go west, coming and going by cloud, and never staying anywhere for long. When the Jade Emperor was holding his morning court one day, the immortal Zhu of Jingyang came forward from the body of officials, kowtowed, and suggested, "The great sage equaling heaven is spending his time in idle travel and is making acquaintance of all the stars in the sky, calling them his friends irrespective of their rank. It would be well to give him some responsibility and prevent his idleness leading to trouble later on." The Jade Emperor's response to this suggestion was to send for the Monkey King at once. He came in a cheerful mood and asked, "What promotion and reward have you summoned me here to receive, Your Majesty?" "Seeing that you are idle and have nothing to do," replied the Jade Emperor, "we are giving you a job. You are to administer the peach orchard, and you will give it your attention day and night." The great sage was overjoyed, and after expressing his thanks and chanting "Na-ah-wah," he withdrew. In his eagerness to be at work, he went straight to the peach orchard to have a look around. When he got there, he was stopped by a local tutelary god who asked him, "Where are you going, great sage?" "I've been put in charge of the peach orchard by the Jade Emperor, and I've come to inspect it." The local god hastened to greet him formally, and he called the men who weeded, brought water, looked after the trees, and swept the grounds to come and kowtow to the great sage. When son Wukong was taken inside, this is what he saw. Charming, every tree, charming and luxuriant full blossom, every tree weighed down with fruit, the fruit-laden branches bend like carding bows. The blossoming trees are covered with powder and rouge. Always blossoming, always in fruit, they are ripe for 1,000 years. They know no summer or winter, but linger forever. The early ripeners look red-faced and tipsy. The ones still growing are green in stalk and skin. When the dew forms, their flesh has a touch of blue, while the sun picks up their vermilion beauty. Below the trees exotic flowers grow, bright and unfading throughout the year. On either side stand towers and pavilions, and a rainbow always arches the sky. These are not the common breeds of dark earth's capital, but are tended by the queen mother of the jade pool. After taking a good look at this, the great sage asked the local god, "How many of these trees are there?" 3,600 altogether, the local god replied. "The ones growing at the front have tiny blossoms and small fruit, and they ripen every 3,000 years. Anyone who eats them becomes an immortal and understands the way, and his body becomes both light and strong. The 1,200 in the middle have multiple blossoms and sweet fruits and ripen every 6,000 years. Whoever eats them can fly and enjoy eternal youth. The back 1,200 are streaked with purple and have pale yellow stones. They ripen once every 9,000 years, and anyone who eats them becomes as eternal as heaven and earth, as long-lived as the sun and the moon." The great sage was beside himself with joy on learning this, and that day he checked the number of trees and looked over the buildings in the orchard before going back to his residence. From then on he went to admire them every 3 or 4 days. He dropped his friends and made no more pleasure jaunts. One day he noticed that the peaches near the end of the branches of one old tree were all but ripe, and he felt like trying one. But as the local god, the workmen, and the immortal clerks from his residence were close on his heels, it was impossible. Suddenly he had an idea, and he said, "Go and wait for me outside the gates while I take a nap in this summer house." All the immortals thereupon withdrew, and the Monkey King took off his official hat and clothes, climbed one of the bigger trees, and chose some large ripe peaches. When he had picked a good number, he sat at his ease in the branches and ate his fill of them, then jumped back down from the tree, pinned on his hat, put on his clothes, and shouted for his attendants to go back to his residence with him. 2 or 3 days later, he thought of another trick to steal some more peaches, and he ate his fill of them. One day, the Queen Mother arranged a banquet, opening many precious pavilions for a feast of peaches by the Jade Pool. She sent the red fairy, the blue fairy, the white fairy, and the black fairy, the purple fairy, the yellow fairy, and the green fairy to the peach order with their baskets to pick peaches for the feast. The 7 fairies went straight to the orchard gates. The workmen of the orchard and the immortal superintendents of the 2 offices of the Equaling Heaven residence were guarding the gate. The fairies went up to them and said, "We have come on the orders of the Queen Mother to pick peaches for a feast." "Wait a moment, please, immortal beauties," said the local god. "Things are different this year. The Jade Emperor has appointed the great sage Equaling Heaven to be the guardian of this orchard, and we must ask him before we can open the orchard to you." "Where is the great sage?" the fairies asked, and the local god replied, "Inside the orchard. As he was feeling tired, he is having a nap by himself in a summer house." "In that case, please find him without delay," requested the fairies, and the local god took them into the orchard. But all they could find of him in the summer house were his hat and clothes. They had no idea where he could have gone, and looked everywhere without success. The great sage had in fact made himself only 2 inches long after eating some of the peaches for fun, and he was sleeping under a large leaf at the top of one of the big trees. "We have come by decree, and we can't go back empty-handed, although the great sage is nowhere to be found," said the fairies. One of the immortal superintendents who was standing nearby replied, "As you immortal beauties have come by order of the Queen Mother, we must not delay you. Our great sage is always wandering off, so I expect he has gone away to visit some of his friends. You had better pick the peaches. It'll be all right if we inform him." The fairies did as he suggested and went to the orchard to pick peaches. First they filled 2 baskets from the trees in front, and then they picked 3 basketfuls from the trees in the middle. But when they came to the trees at the back, they saw the peaches and blossoms were few and far between. Only a few unripe fruits with furry stalks and green skins were left. All the ripe ones had been eaten up by the Monkey King. The 7 fairies looked everywhere, but all they could see was a single red and white peach on the southern branch. The blue fairy pulled the branch down, the red fairy picked a peach, and then they let the branch go again. This woke up the great sage, who had changed himself into a peach to take a nap on this branch. He resumed his own form, took his gold-banded cudgel from his ear, shook it until it was thick as a rice bowl, and shouted at them, "Where are you from, you thieving fiends?" The 7 fairies fell on their knees in confusion. "Please don't be angry with us, great sage. We're not fiends, but 7 fairies sent by Her Majesty the Queen Mother of the West, pick peaches of immortality, and open the precious halls here for a feast of peaches. When we arrived here, we saw the local god and other deities of the place, but we could not find you, great sage. We could not delay carrying out the Queen Mother's orders, so we went ahead and picked the peaches without waiting for you, great sage. We very much hope that you will forgive us." These words turned the great sage's bad mood into a good one, and he said, "Please rise, fairy beauties. Who is the Queen Mother inviting to this feast?" "There are old rules about who attends. The Buddha of the Western Heaven, Bodhisattvas, holy monks, Arhats, the Gaian of the South Pole, the merciful and sage Emperor of the East, the venerable immortals of the 10 continents and 3 islands, the mystic divinity of the North Pole, and the great yellow-horned immortal of the Yellow Pole at the center. These make up the 5 venerable ones of the 5 regions. There will also be the Star Lords of the 5 constellations, the 3 pure ones, the 4 emperors and heavenly immortal of the great monad from the 8 high caves, the Jade Emperor, the immortals of 9 mounds, and the gods of the seas and mountains, and the ruler of the nether world from the 8 lower caves, and the terrestrial deities. All the major and minor gods of all the halls and palaces will come to the Feast of Peaches." Will I be invited? Asked the great sage with an ingratiating smile. Not as far as we've heard, the fairies replied. I'm the great sage equaling heaven, so why wouldn't I be asked? Asked the great sage. That was what happened before. We don't know about this time, the fairies replied. You're right, he said. Just wait here while I go and find out whether I'm invited. Splendid great sage, making a magic with his hands, he spoke the words of the spell. He said to the fairies, stay where you are, stay where you are. As this was an immobilizing spell, the 7 fairies were left standing in a daze under the peach tree with their eyes wide open as the great sage leapt out of the orchard on a somersault cloud and headed for the jade pool. As he traveled, he saw that the sky shimmered with auspicious light as clouds of many colors streamed across it. The white stork's cry made the heavens shake. 1,000 leaves grew on the purple asphodel. Amid it all, an immortal appeared, carrying himself with heaven-sent elegance as he danced on the rainbow cloaked by the Milky Way, with a talisman at his waist to ward off birth and death. His name was Barefoot Immortal, and he was going to the feast of longevity-giving peaches. As the Barefoot Immortal saw him, the great sage lowered his head and thought of a plan by which to trick the immortal and get to the banquet himself. Where are you going, reverend sir? He asked, and the immortal replied, I'm going to the peach banquet by the invitation of the Queen Mother. There's something you do not know, venerable sir, said the great sage. As my somersault cloud is so fast, the Jade Emperor has sent me to tell all you gentlemen to go to the Hall of Universal Brightness for a ceremony before going to the banquet. As the immortal was an open and upright man, he took this lie for the truth, but he wondered. The Thanksgiving ceremony is usually held by the Jade Pool, so why are we having the ceremony in the Hall of Universal Brightness before going to the Jade Pool for the banquet? Nevertheless, he turned his propitious cloud around and went to the Hall of Universal Brightness. As the great sage rode his cloud, he said a spell, shook himself, took the form of the Barefoot Immortal, and hurried to the Jade Pool. He reached the pavilion there a moment later, stopped his cloud, and went quietly inside. He saw fabulous perfumes coiling, a confusion of auspicious clouds, the jade tower set with color, the precious pavilion scattering mists. The phoenix soars until almost lost to view, and jeweled flowers seem to rise and fall above a 9-phoenix screen. A rainbow stool of the 8 precious things, a colored gold tablet, green jade bowls with 1,000 flowers. On the table were dragon livers and the marrow of phoenix bone, bear's paws and ape's lips, 100 different dishes, and all of them good, rare fruits and fine delicacies, every one unique. Everything was neatly set out, but no immortals had yet arrived. The great sage had not finished looking when he smelt wine, and as he whirled round, he saw under a portico to the right several immortal officials in charge of brewing liquor, with some workmen who stirred the lees, a number of novices who carried water, and some boys who looked after the fires. They were washing the vats and scrubbing the pots, having made jade liquor and a fragrant fermentation of the lees. The great sage could not stop himself from drooling, and he longed to drink some, but unfortunately all those people were there. So he performed a spell by pulling several hairs from his body, chewing them up, spitting them up, saying the magic words, and shouting, "Change!" Whereupon the hairs turned into sleep insects, which flew into the faces of all the liquor makers. Watch them as their hands go limp, their heads droop, their eyes close, and they drop off their symbols of office and all fall asleep. Whereupon the great sage grabbed the rare delicacies and exotic foods, then went under the portico and drank from the vats and pots until he was completely drunk. Only then did he think, this won't do at all. When the guests come for the banquet, they'll be furious with me, and I'll be for it if I'm caught. I better get back to the residence as soon as I can and sleep it off. Our dear great sage staggered and swayed, charging about all over the place under the influence of the liquor and going the wrong way. He arrived not at the Equaling Heaven residence, but at the Tushita Heavenly Palace. As soon as he saw this, he sobered up and said to himself, "The Tripitaka Palace is the highest of the 33 heavens, where Lord Laozi of the Great Monad reigns. However did I get here? Never mind. I've always wanted to see that old chap, and I've never managed to come here before. I might as well go and have a look at him now that I'm passing this way." He straightened his clothes and rushed in, but he did not see Lord Laozi. There was no sign of anyone. This was because Laozi and the ancient Buddha Tripitaka were expounding the way from a red dais in a triple-story pavilion, and all the immortal boys, generals, officials, and petty functionaries were standing to right and left, listening to the lecture. The great sage went straight to the room in which the elixir was kept, and although he could not find Laozi, there he saw there was a small fire in the stove beside the range over which pills were made. On either side of the stove were 5 gourds full of golden pills of refined elixir. "This is the immortal's greatest treasure," he exclaimed with delight. "I've wanted to refine some of these golden pills to save people with ever since I understood the way and mastered the principle of the correspondence of the esoteric and exoteric, but I've never had time to come here. Today I'm in luck. I've found him. As Laozi isn't here, I'll try a few." He emptied the gourds of their contents and ate up all the pills as if he were eating fried beans. Before long he was full of pills and quite sober. "This is terrible," he thought. "This is a colossal disaster. If the Jade Emperor is shocked by this, I'm done for. I must get out of here. I'd be much better off as a king in the lower world." He rushed out of the Tripitaka Palace, avoiding his usual route. Using a spell to make himself invisible, he left by the west gate of heaven and went straight down to the mountain of flowers and fruit by cloud. When he got there, he saw flags, banners, spears, and halberds gleaming in the sun. The 4 stalwart generals and the 72 kings of the monsters were holding military exercises. "Children, I'm back," shouted the great sage in a loud voice, and all the fiends dropped their weapons and fell to their knees. "You don't care, do you, great sage?" they said. "It's been so long since you left us, and you never came back to see us." "I haven't been long," protested the great sage, and as they talked, they walked into the innermost part of the cave. When the 4 stalwart generals had tidied the place up and made him sit down, they kowtowed to him and said, "What office did you hold, great sage, during your century and more in heaven?" The great sage laughed and said, "As far as I can remember, it was only 6 months. Why do you say it was over a century?" "A day in heaven is the same as a year on earth," the stalwart generals replied. "I was lucky this time," said the great sage. "The Jade Emperor took a liking to me and ennobled me as the great sage equaling heaven. He had an equaling heaven residence built for me, complete with a tranquility office and a calm divinity office, with immortal functionaries, attendants, and guards. Later on, when he saw that I had nothing to do, he put me in charge of the peach orchard. Recently, the Queen Mother Goddess gave a peach banquet, but she didn't invite me. Instead of waiting for an invitation, I went to the Jade Pool and stole all the immortal food and drink. I staggered away from the Jade Pool and blundered into Lord Laozi's palace, and there I ate up his 5 gourds of pills of immortality. Then I got through the heavenly gates and came here because I was scared that the Jade Emperor was going to punish me." All the fiends were delighted with what they heard, and they laid on liquor and fruit with which to welcome him back. They filled a stone bowl with coconut toddy and handed it to him, but when he tasted it, the great sage grimaced and said, "It's awful, it's awful." 2 of his stalwart generals, Bing and Ba, explained, "You don't find coconut toddy very tasty because you have drunk immortal liquor and eaten immortal food in the heavenly palace, great sage. But as the saying goes, sweet or not, it's water from home." To this the great sage replied, "And all of you, whether related to me or not, are from my home. When I was enjoying myself beside the jade pool today, I saw jars and jars of jade liquor under a portico there. As none of you have ever tasted it, I'll go and pinch you a few jars. Then you can each have a little drink and live forever." As the monkeys were beside themselves with glee, the great sage went out of the cave, turned a somersault, made himself invisible, and went straight to the peach banquet. As he went through the gates of the jade pool, he saw that the men who made the wine, stirred the lees, carried the water, and looked after the fire were still snoring away. He tucked 2 big jars of wine under his arms, took 2 more in his hands, then turned his cloud around and went back to have a feast of immortal wine with the monkey masses in the cave. They all drank several cups and were very happy, but we will not go into this. The story returns to the 7 fairies, who were only able to free themselves a whole day after Sun Wukong had immobilized them with his magic. They picked up their baskets and went back to report to the Queen Mother that they were late because the great sage equaling heaven had held them there by magic. "How many peaches did you pick?" the Queen Mother asked. 2 baskets of the little ones and 3 baskets of the medium ones, but when we got to the back we could not find a single big one, and we think they were all eaten by the great sage. While we were looking for some, the great sage suddenly appeared, and he beat and tortured us to make him tell who had been invited to the banquet. After we had told him, he immobilized us there, and we don't know where he went. We only came round and freed ourselves a moment ago." On hearing this, the Queen Mother went to see the Jade Emperor and gave him a full account of what had happened. Before she had finished, the liquor makers arrived with their immortal officials to report that an unknown person had thrown the grand peach banquet into confusion and stolen the jade liquor as well as the precious delicacies of 100 flavors. Then came 4 heavenly teachers to announce that the supreme patriarch of the way, Lao Tzu, had arrived. The Jade Emperor went out with the Green Mother to meet him, and after doing obeisance, Lao Tzu said, "I had refined some golden pills of the 9 transformations in my palace for a feast of elixir pills with your majesty, but a thief has stolen them. This is what I have come to report to your majesty." This news made the Jade Emperor tremble with fear. Not long afterwards, the immortal administrators from the Equaling Heaven residence came to kowtow and report, "The great sage Sun Wukong abandoned his post and went wandering off yesterday. He has not come back yet, and we do not know where he has gone." The Jade Emperor, now more suspicious than ever, then saw the barefoot immortal bow his head to the ground. "Your subject was going to the banquet on a summons from the Queen Mother," he reported, "when I happened to meet the great sage equaling heaven. He told me, O Lord of 10,000 years, that you had issued a decree ordering him to tell the rest of us to go to the Hall of Universal Brightness for a ceremony before going to the banquet. Your subject went back to the Hall of Universal Brightness as he told me to, but as I did not see the Imperial Dragon and Phoenix Chariot outside, I hurried here to await orders. This wretch has the impudence to invent fraudulent decrees and deceive eminent ministers," exclaimed the Jade Emperor with anger and astonishment. "The miraculous investigator is to find out at once what he has been up to." The miraculous investigator left the palace in obedience to the edict, and by making thorough inquiries he found out all the details of what had happened. The wrecker of the heavenly palace was Sun Wukong, he reported, and he went on to give a full account. The Jade Emperor was furiously angry, and he ordered the 4 great heavenly kings, along with Heavenly King Li and Prince Neza, to mobilize the 28 constellations, the 9 bright shiners, the 12 gods of the 12 branches, the revealers of the truth of the 5 regions, the 4 duty gods, the constellations of the east and west, the gods of the north and south, the deity of the 5 mountains and 4 rivers, the star ministers of all heaven, and a total of 100,000 heavenly soldiers. They were to descend to the lower world with 18 heaven and earth nets, surround the mountains of flowers and fruit, and capture the wretch for punishment. The gods called out their troops at once and left the heavenly palace. A gusty sandstorm blotted out the heavens, purple fog threw the earth into darkness. Just because the monkey fiend offended the Supreme Emperor, heavenly hosts were sent down to the mortal dust. The 4 great heavenly kings, the revealer of the truth of the 5 regions, the 4 great heavenly kings held the supreme command, and the revealers controlled the soldiers' movements. Li, the pagoda carrier, commanded the central corps. Neza the Deadly led the van. The star Rahu ordered the leading rams, and the star Ketu towered behind. The sun revealed his divinity, and the radiance shone from the moon. The stars of the 5 elements were mighty in valor, and the 9 bright shiners were fond of battle. The stars of the branches, Zi, Wu, Mao, and Yu, were all great heavenly warriors. The 5 plagues and the 5 mountains were drawn up on the east and west, while the 6 Ding and 6 Jai marched to the right and left. The dragon gods of the 4 rivers stood above and below, and the 28 constellations were drawn up in serried ranks. Horn, gullet, base, and chamber were the officers commanding. Strider, harvester, stomach, and mane wielding sword. Dipper, ox, woman, barons, roof, house, and wall, heart, tail, and winnower, all able stars. Well, ghost, willow, spread, wing, and apple tree wielded their swords and spears, showed forth their power, halted their clouds, and descended in mist to the mortal world, pitching camp before the mountain of flowers and fruit. There is a poem that runs, many the transformations of the heaven-born Monkey King, happy in his lair after stealing the pills and wine. Just because he wrecked the banquet of peaches, 100,000 heavenly troops now spread their nets. Heavenly King Li gave the order for the heavenly soldiers to pitch camp and throw a watertight cordon around the mountain of flowers and fruit. Above and below they spread 18 heaven and earth nets, and the 9 bright shiners were set out to start the battle. They took their soldiers to the outside of the cave, where they saw the monkeys, big and small, leaping and fooling around. The star officers shouted in harsh voices, "Little goblin, where's that great sage of yours? We are gods, sent from the upper world to subdue your mutinous great sage. Tell him to surrender at once, and if there's so much as a hint of a no from him, we will exterminate every last one of you." The little monkeys went rushing in to report. "Great sage, a disaster, a disaster. There are 9 evil gods outside who say they've been sent from the upper world to subdue you." The great sage, who was just then sharing the immortal liquor with the 72 kings of monsters and his 4 stalwart generals, paid no attention to the report, saying, "Today we have wine, so today we celebrate. To hell with what's happening outside the gate." But before the words were out of his mouth, another group of little devils came in. "Those 9 evil gods are using foul and provocative language to challenge us to fight," they announced. "Never mind them then," said the great sage with a laugh. "With verse and wine we're happy today. Who cares when fame will come our way?" But before the words were out of his mouth, yet another group of devils came rushing in. "Sir, those 9 evil gods have smashed the gates and are charging in." "The stinking gods!" exploded the great sage. "What nerve! I never wanted to fight with them, so why should they come in here to push us around?" He thereupon ordered the one-horned monster king to lead the 72 monster kings into battle, while he followed them with the 4 stalwart generals. The monster king hastily assembled the devil soldiers and sallied forth to meet the enemy. They were all stopped by a charge by the 9 bright shiners who held the head of the iron bridge so that no one could enter or leave. During the tumult, the great sage came on the screen, shouting, "Make way!" He raised his iron cudgel, shook it till it was thick as a bowl and 12 feet long, and struck and parried as he came charging out. The 9 bright shiners, who were no match for him, fell back. "You reckless protector of the horses," they shouted when they were back in the safety of their own position. "You have committed the most terrible crimes. You stole the peaches and the wine, and pilfered the immortality pills of Lord Lao Tzu. On top of all this, you brought some of the immortal liquor you stole back here. Don't you realize that you have piled crime upon crime?" The great sage laughed. It's true, he said, "but what are you going to do about it?" "In obedience to a golden edict of the Jade Emperor," the 9 bright shiners replied, "we have led out troops here to subdue you. Submit at once, or else all these creatures of yours will have to pay with their lives. If you refuse, we shall trample this mountain flat and turn your cave upside down." "You hairy gods," roared the great sage in fury, "what magic powers have you got to let you talk so big? Clear off, or I'll give you a taste of my cudgel." The 9 bright shiners did a war dance together, which did not frighten the handsome Monkey King in the least. He whirled his gold-banded cudgel, parrying to the right and left, and fought the 9 bright shiners till their muscles were weak and their strength was gone. Then each one of them broke ranks and fled, dragging their weapons behind them. They rushed to the command post of the Central Corps and reported to the pagoda-bearing Heavenly King Li that the Monkey King was so ferocious that they had fled from the battlefield, unable to defeat him. Heavenly King Li then sent the 4 heavenly kings and the 28 constellations into battle. The great sage, not at all frightened at this, ordered the one-horned demon king, the 72 kings of the monsters, and the 4 stalwart generals to draw up their line of battle outside the gates of the cave. The ensuing melee was really terrifying. Howling winds, dark sinister clouds, one side flags and standards colorfully flying, on the other side the gleam of spears and halberds. Round helmets shine, layered armor gleams. The shining round helmets reflect the sun like silver boulders reaching to the sky. Gleaming layers of armor are built into a wall like a mountain of ice weighing down the earth. Long-handled swords flash through the clouds like lightning. Paper-white spears pierce mist and fogs. Heaven-shaped halberds, tiger-eye chains, bristling like a field of hemp. Bronze swords and 4 brightness spears drawn up like a dense forest. Bows and crossbows, eagle-feathered arrows, short clubs, and snaky spears to terrify the soul. Wielding his single as-you-will cudgel, the great sage fights against the heavenly gods. Such is the slaughter that no bird flies over it, and tigers and wolves flee in terror. The swirling stones and clouds of sand make everything dark. The dirt and the dust blot out the heavens. The clash of arms startles the universe as the battle strikes awe into gods and demons. The battle started in the morning and went on till the sun set behind the mountains in the west. By then, the one-horned demon king and the 72 kings of the monsters had all been captured by the heavenly hosts. Only the 4 stalwart generals and the monkeys had got away, and they were now hiding in the innermost recesses of the water-curtain cave. The great sage solitary cudgel had fought off the 4 heavenly kings, Li the pagoda-bearer, and Prince Neza, who were all in the sky. After the battle had gone on for a long time, the great sage saw the night was drawing on, so he plucked out one of his hairs, munched it up, spat out the pieces, and shouted, "Change!" They changed into thousands of great sages, all with gold-banded cudgels, who forced Prince Neza and the 5 heavenly kings to withdraw. After winning this victory, the great sage put back his hair and hurried back to the cave, where the 4 stalwart generals at once led the monkeys out to kowtow at the head of the iron bridge to welcome him back. They sobbed 3 times, and they laughed 3 times. "Why are you laughing and crying at the sight of me?" the great sage asked. "When we led all the commanders into battle against the heavenly kings this morning," replied the stalwart generals, "the 72 kings of the monsters and the one-horned demon king were all captured by the gods, and we had to flee for our lives. That is why we cried. We laughed because you, great sage, have come back victorious and unharmed." To this the great sage replied, "Victory and defeat are all the soldier's lot. As the ancients said, to kill 10,000 of the enemy, you must lose 3,000 of your own. Anyhow, the officers of ours who were captured were all tigers, leopards, wolves, badgers, river deer, foxes, and raccoon dogs. Not one of our own kind was even wounded, so there's no need for us to be bothered about it. But although I forced the enemy to withdraw by dividing up my body through magic, they're still encamped at the foot of our mountains, so we'll have to remain on our guard. Meanwhile, we must eat a good meal and get a good night's sleep to build up our energy. Tomorrow morning, I'll use powerful magic to capture those heavenly generals and avenge our people." After the 4 stalwart generals and the other monkey commanders had drunk several cups of coconut toddy, they went to bed with their worries calmed. When the 4 heavenly kings had withdrawn their troops and ended the battle, those who had distinguished themselves reported what they had done. Some had captured tigers and leopards, some lions and elephants, and others wolves and raccoon dogs, but not one single monkey goblin had been taken. Then they built a mighty stockade around their camp. Commanders who had distinguished themselves were rewarded, and the soldiers who made up the heaven and earth nets were ordered to surround the mountain of flowers and fruit, holding bells and shouting, ready for a great battle the next day. Every man heard the orders, and they were strictly obeyed. Indeed, A wicked monkey made chaos, shocking heaven and earth, so they spread their nets and watched by night and day. Chapter 6. Guan Yin comes to the feast and asks the reason why. The little sage uses his might to subdue the great sage. We shall leave for the moment the heavenly generals making their encirclement and the soundly sleeping great sage. The story goes on to tell how the compassionate and merciful miraculous savior from suffering, the Bodhisattva Guan Yin of Mount Potaraka in the Southern Sea, having been invited by the Queen Mother to the peach banquet, went to the precious pavilions at the Jade Pool with her great disciple, Huan the Novice. She found the place deserted and the banquet ruined. The few immortals present were not sitting at their places, but holding confused discussions. When the greetings were over, the immortals gave the Bodhisattva an account of what happened. "If there has been no banquet and no drinking," said the Bodhisattva, "you had all better come with me to the Jade Emperor." The immortals were delighted to follow her, and when they arrived before the Hall of Universal Brightness, the 4 heavenly teachers, the Barefoot Immortal, and many others were all there to greet the Bodhisattva. They told her that the Jade Emperor had sent heavenly armies to capture the demon, but they had not yet returned. "I wish to see the Jade Emperor," said the Bodhisattva, "so may I trouble you to inform him on my behalf?" The heavenly teacher Queen Hongji then went to the Hall of Miraculous Mist, and the Bodhisattva was invited in. She found that Lord Laozi was there in the place of honor, and the Queen Mother was behind him. The Bodhisattva went to the head of the others, and when she had done obeisance to the Jade Emperor, she greeted Laozi and the Queen Mother. After they had all sat down, she asked what had happened at the peach banquet. "The banquet is held every year, and is normally a very happy occasion," the Jade Emperor replied. "But this year that monkey fiend wrecked it, so that your invitation was worth nothing." "Where does this monkey fiend come from?" asked the Bodhisattva. "He was born from a stone egg on the mountain of flowers and fruit in the land of Aolai in the eastern continent of Superior Body," the Jade Emperor answered. "When he was born, golden beams flashed from his eyes that reached to the Star Palace. At first we paid no attention to him, but later on he became a spirit, subduing dragons and tigers, and erasing his own name from the registers of death. The Dragon Kings and King Yama of the underworld informed us of this in memorials, and we wanted to capture him, but the Star of Longevity memorialized that in the 3 worlds all beings with 9 orifices could become immortals. We therefore extended education to the worthy by summoning him to the upper world and appointing him protector of the horses in the imperial stable. But this was not good enough for the scoundrel, who rebelled against heaven. We sent Heavenly King Li and Prince Neza to accept his surrender, extended to him an amnesty, and summoned him back to the upper world. We made him a great sage equaling heaven, though this carried no salary. And as he had nothing to do, he would go wandering all over the place, and for fear that this might lead to trouble, we had him look after the peach orchard. Once again he flouted the law by stealing and eating every single one of the big peaches from the old trees. When the banquet was to be held, he was not invited, as his position was purely an honorary one. So he played a trick on the Barefoot Immortal, went to the banquet looking like him, ate all the immortal delicacies, and drank all the immortal liquor. On top of this, he stole Lord Laozi's pills of immortality and some imperial liquor, which he took to his mountains for the monkeys to enjoy. This made us very angry, so we sent 100,000 heavenly troops to spread heaven and earth nets and subdue him. But we have received no reports today, so we do not know whether we have been victorious." When the Bodhisattva heard this, she said to Huan the Novice, "Hurry down from heaven to the mountain of flowers and fruit, and find out about the military situation. If you meet with any opposition, you may do your bit to help, but the important thing is to bring back an accurate report." Huan the Novice straightened his robes, took his iron staff, left the palace by cloud, and went straight to the mountains. He saw that with the layer upon layer of heaven and earth nets, and the men holding bells and shouting passwords at the gates of the camp, the cordon around the mountain was watertight. Huan stopped and called, "Heavenly soldiers at the gates of the camp, I would trouble you to report that I, Mokska, the second son of Heavenly King Li, also known as Huan, the senior disciple of Guanyin of the Southern Sea, have come to ask about the military situation. Then the divine soldiers of the 5 mountains inside the camp went in through the gates of the headquarters, where the rat, the cock, the horse, and the hare stars reported the news to the commander of the Central Corps. Heavenly King Lai sent a flag of command with the order that the heaven and earth nets were to be opened to let Huan in. The east was just beginning to grow light as Huan followed the flag in and bowed to Heavenly King Li and the 4 other heavenly kings. "Where have you come from, my son?" asked Heavenly King Li. "Your stupid son accompanied the Bodhisattva to the peach banquet, and when she found the banquet deserted and nobody at the Jade Pool, she took me and the other immortals to see the Jade Emperor. The Jade Emperor told her that you, father, and the other kings had gone down to the lower world to capture this monkey fiend. As the Jade Emperor had received no news all day on the outcome of the battle, the Bodhisattva sent me here to find out what has happened." "We arrived here and encamped yesterday," Heavenly King Lai replied, "then sent the 9 bright shiners to challenge the enemy to battle, but that wretch used such tremendous magic powers that the 9 bright shiners all came back defeated. Then we led out our own soldiers into action, and the wretch also drew up his line of battle. Our 100,000 heavenly soldiers fought an indecisive engagement with him till dusk, when he used a spell to divide up his body and force us back. When we withdrew our forces and held an investigation, we found that we had only captured wolves, tigers, leopards, and so on, and had not even taken half a monkey fiend. We have not yet given battle today." Before he finished speaking, someone appeared outside the gates of the headquarters to report that the great sage was outside, at the head of a crowd of monkey spirits clamoring for battle. The 4 other heavenly kings, Heavenly King Li and Prince Neza, were all for committing their forces, but Mosca said, "Father, when your stupid son was instructed by the Bodhisattva to come here and find out the news, I was told that if there was a battle, I could do my bit to help. May I please go and see what sort of great sage he is, untalented though I am?" "My boy," said Heavenly King Li, "you have been cultivating your conduct with the Bodhisattva for some years now, so I suppose that you must have acquired some magic powers, but do be very careful." The splendid Prince Mosca hitched up his embroidered robes and charged out through the gates of the headquarters, waving his iron staff with both hands. "Which of you is the great sage equaling heaven?" he shouted. "I am," answered the great sage, brandishing his as-you-will cudgel. "But who do you think you are, asking a question like that?" "I am Prince Mosca, the 2nd son of Heavenly King Li, and I am now a disciple and a guard before the throne of the Bodhisattva Guanyin. My Buddhist name is Huan. Why have you come here to see me instead of staying in the Southern Sea and cultivating your conduct?" asked the great sage, and Mosca replied, "My teacher sent me here to find out about the military situation, but now that I've seen your savagery, I've come to capture you." "You talk big, don't you?" said the great sage. "Well then, don't go away. Try a taste of my cudgel." Mosca, not in the least frightened, struck at him with his iron staff. It was a fine fight. They fought halfway up the mountainside outside the gates of the headquarters. The staves were matched, but made of different iron. The weapons clashed, but their masters were not the same. One was a wayward immortal known as the Great Sage, the other a true dragon disciple of Guanyin. The cast-iron staff, beaten with 1,000 hammers, had been forged by the art of the Ding and the Jai. The as-you-will cudgel once anchored the Milky Way. As the treasure stilling the sea, its magic power was great. When the two met, they were well matched indeed, and they parried and lunged at each other without end. The sinister cudgel, infinitely murderous, could whirl around your waist as quick as the wind. The spear-catching staff, never yielding an opening, was irresistible, parrying to right and left. On the one side the flags and banners fly, on the other the camel drums roll. 10,000 heavenly generals in multiple encirclement, a cave of monkey devils densely packed together. Monstrous fogs and evil clouds cover the earth, while the smoke of deadly battle rises to the sky. Yesterday's fighting was bad enough, today's struggle is even worse. The admirable skills of the Monkey King put Mosca to flight, utterly defeated. After they had fought some 50 or 60 rounds, Huan's arm and shoulders were numbed and aching, and he could resist the great sage no longer. Waving his staff in a feint, he turned away and ran. The great sage then withdrew his monkey soldiers and encamped outside the gates of the cave. The big and little heavenly soldiers at the gates of the other camp received Huan and let him go straight to the headquarters, where he gasped and panted for breath. He said to the 4 heavenly kings, Li the pagoda bearer, and his brother Prince Neza, "What a great sage! What a great sage! His magic powers are too much for me. He beat me." Startled by the news, Heavenly King Li had a request for reinforcements written and sent the strong-armed Devil King and Prince Mosca up to heaven to submit. Not daring to waste a moment, the 2 messengers rushed out through the heaven and earth nets and mounted their propitious clouds. A moment later they arrived outside the Hall of Universal Brightness, where they greeted the 4 heavenly teachers, who led them to the Hall of Miraculous Mist and handed up their memorial. Prince Mosca, or Huan, did homage to the Buddhist, who asked him what he had found out. "As you instructed me, I went to the Mountain of Flowers and Fruit," reported Huan, "and asked them to open the gates of heaven and earth net, saw my father, and told him of the orders you had given me. His Majesty, my father, said that they fought against the Monkey King yesterday, but did not capture a single monkey spirit, only tigers, leopards, lions, elephants, and so on. While he was telling me this, the Monkey King demanded battle again, so your disciple fought some 50 or 60 rounds against him with my iron staff, but I was no match for him. He beat me and drove me back to the camp. This is why my father has sent me and the strong-armed Devil King up to heaven to ask for reinforcements." The Buddha Vista lowered her head in deep thought. The Jade Emperor opened the memorial and saw that it contained a request for help. "This intolerable monkey spirit has enough tricks to fight off 100,000 heavenly soldiers," he observed with a smile. "Heavenly King Li has asked for reinforcements." Before the words were out of his mouth, Guan Yin put her hands together and said, "Do not worry, your Majesty. I can recommend a god to capture this monkey." "Which god?" the Jade Emperor asked, and the Bodhisattva replied, "Your Majesty's nephew, the illustrious sage and true Lord Erlang, who is now living at Guangjiakou in Ganzhou, enjoying the incense that the lower beings burn to him. In the past, he exterminated the 6 bogies. He has the brothers of Plum Hill and the 1,200 straw head gods, and his magical powers are enormous. He will agree to be sent, though he will not obey a summons to come here, so your Majesty might like to issue a decree ordering him to take his troops to the rescue." The Jade Emperor then issued such a decree and sent the strong-armed Devil King to deliver it. The Devil King took the decree, mounted his cloud, and went straight to Guangjiakou. He reached the temple of the true Lord within an hour. When the demon judges guarding the gates went in to report that there was an envoy from heaven standing outside with an imperial decree, Erlang went with the brothers to receive the decree outside the gates, and incense was burned as he read. The great sage equaling heaven, the monkey fiend of the Mountain of Flowers and Fruit, has rebelled. Because he stole peaches, wine, and pills while in heaven, and wrecked the peach banquet, we have dispatched 100,000 heavenly soldiers and 18 heaven and earth nets to surround the mountain and force him to submit, but we have not yet succeeded. We do now, therefore, especially appoint our worthy nephew and his sworn brothers to go to the Mountain of Flowers and Fruit and give their help in eliminating him. When you succeed, large rewards and high office shall be yours." Erlang was delighted. He told the envoy from heaven to go back and report that he would be putting his sword to the Emperor's service. We need not describe how the Devil King reported back to heaven. The true Lord Erlang called the 6 sworn brothers of Plum Hill, Marshals Tang, Zhang, Yao, and Li, and General Kuo Shen and Zi Zhan together before the hall. "The Jade Emperor has just ordered us to the Mountain of Flowers and Fruit to subdue a monkey fiend," he said. "You are all coming with me." The brothers were all eager to go, and mustering their divine troops, they unleashed a gale wind. In an instant they had crossed the eastern ocean, riding eagles and leading dogs, pulling their bows and drawing their crossbows, and had reached the Mountain of Flowers and Fruit. Finding that many layers of heaven and earth nets were impenetrable, Erlang shouted, "Listen, all you generals in charge of the heaven and earth nets. I am the true Lord and the illustrious sage Erlang. I have been sent here by the Jade Emperor to capture the monkey fiend. Open the gates of the camp and let me in at once." Each line of gods forming the nets let them through, and the 4 other heavenly kings and heavenly King Li all came to welcome him outside the headquarters. When the introductions were over, he asked how the fighting had gone, and the heavenly kings gave him a full account of what had happened. Now that I, the little sage, have come here, I shall have to match a few transformations with him, said Erlang with a smile. I hope that all you gentlemen will maintain a close cordon with your heaven and earth nets, but don't screen off the top of the mountain. Then I'll be able to fight him. If he beats me, I shan't need the help of you gentlemen, as I have my brothers to support me. And if I beat him, I won't have to trouble you to tie him up, as my brothers can do it. I would just like to ask Heavenly King Li to stand in the sky and operate this fiend-detecting mirror. I'm worried that if he's beaten, he may go and hide somewhere, so you will have to give me a clear view of him and not let him get away. The heavenly kings stayed in the 4 quarters, and all the heavenly soldiers were drawn up in their battle positions. The true Lord Erlang went out at the head of the 4 marshals and 2 generals, making 7 sworn brothers, with himself included, to challenge the enemy to battle, and he ordered his other officers to defend the camp firmly and keep the eagles and dogs under control. All the straw-headed gods acknowledged the order. Erlang then went to the outside of the water-curtained cave, where he saw the monkey hordes neatly drawn up in a coiled dragon battle line. In the middle of the central course stood a pole with a banner on it reading, "Great Sage, equaling heaven." "What business has that loathsome fiend to call himself the equal of heaven?" Erlang asked, and the 6 sworn brothers of Plum Hill replied, "Stop admiring him and challenge him to battle." When the junior monkeys at the gate of their camp saw the true Lord Erlang, they rushed back to report, whereupon the Monkey King took his gold-banded cudgel, adjusted his golden armor, put on his cloud-walking shoes, felt his golden helmet, and leapt out through the gates of the camp. He saw at first sight how cool and remarkable Erlang looked, and how elegantly he was dressed. Indeed, his bearing was refined, his visage noble, his ears hung down to his shoulders, and his eyes shone. The hat on his head had 3 peaks and phoenixes flying, and his robe was of a pale goose yellow. His boots were lined with cloth of gold, dragons coiled around his socks. His jade belt was decorated with the 8 jewels. At his waist was a bow, curved like a moon. In his hand a double-edged trident. His axe had split open Peach Mountain when he rescued his mother. His bow had killed the twin phoenixes of Zhonglu. Widespread was his fame for killing the 8 bogies, and he had become one of Plum Hill's 7 sages. His heart was too lofty to acknowledge his relatives in heaven. In his pride, he went back to be a god at Guanjiang. He was the merciful and miraculous sage of the Red City, Erlang, whose transformations were numberless. When the great sage saw him, he laughed with delight, raised his gold-banded cudgel, and shouted, "Where are you from, little general, that you have the audacity to challenge me? You must be blind, you wretch, if you can't recognize me. I am the nephew of the Jade Emperor, and my title is Merciful and Miraculous King Erlang. I am here on imperial orders to arrest you, protector of the horses. You rebel against heaven, you reckless baboon." "Now I remember who you are," replied the great sage. "Some years ago, the Jade Emperor's younger sister wanted to be mortal and came down to the lower world, where she married a Mr. Yang and gave birth to a son who split the Peach Mountain open with his axe. Is that who you are? I should really fling you a few curses, but I've got no quarrel with you, and it would be a pity to kill you by hitting you with my cudgel. So why don't you hurry back, young sir, and tell those 4 heavenly kings of yours to come out?" When the true Lord Erlang heard this, he burst out angrily, "Damn monkey, where are your manners? Try this blade of mine." The great sage dodged the blow and instantly raised his gold-banded club to hit back. There was a fine battle between the 2 of them. The merciful god Erlang, the great sage equaling heaven. One is the handsome monkey king, the proud deceiver of his enemies. The other a true pillar, the unknown subduer. When the 2 met, they were both in a fighting mood. He who had no respect before, today learned a sense of proportion. The iron staff raced with flying dragons. The divine cudgel seemed like a dancing phoenix. Parrying to the left, thrusting to the right, advancing to meet a blow, flashing behind. The brothers of Plum Hill add to one side's might, while the other has the 4 stalwart generals to transmit orders. As the flags wave and the drums roll, each side is as one. Battle cries and gongs raise everyone's morale. The two steel blades each watch for their chance, but neither leaves an opening as they come and go. The gold-banded cudgel, the treasure from the sea, can fly and transform itself to win victory. A moment's delay and life is lost. A single mistake will be the last. After Erlang and the great sage had fought over 300 rounds, the outcome of the fight was still undecided. Erlang braced himself and with a shake became 10,000 fathoms tall. In his hands, his two-bladed trident looked like the peaks of Mount Hua. His face was black, his fangs were long, and his hair was bright red. He looked ferociously evil. He hacked at the great sage's head. The great sage, also resorting to magic, gave himself a body as big as Erlang's and a face as frightening, and he raised his as-you-will gold-banded cudgel, which was now like the pillar of heaven on the summit of Kunlun Mountain, to ward off Erlang's blow. This reduced the two ape-filled marshals Ma and Li to such trembling terror that they could no longer wave their banners, while the Gibbon generals, Sing and Ba, were too scared to use their swords. On the other side, Tang Sanzang, Yao, Li, Gao Xin, and Zijian threw the straw-headed gods into the assault on the water-curtain cave, with the dogs and eagles unleashed and their bows and crossbows drawn. This attack put the 4 monkey generals to flight, and 2,000 or 3,000 devils were captured. The monkeys had threw away their spears, tore off their armor, abandoned their swords and halberds, and fled screaming. Some went up the mountain, and some returned to the cave, like roosting birds frightened by an owl, or stars scattered across the sky. This is all we have to say about the Sworn Brothers' victory. The story goes on to tell how the true Lord Erlang and the great sage, having turned themselves into figures on the scale of heaven and earth, were locked in battle, when the great sage was suddenly appalled to notice that the monkey fiends in his camp had scattered in terror. Putting off his magic appearance, he broke away and fled, his cudgel in his hand. Seeing him go, the true Lord Erlang hurried after him with long strides. "Where are you going?" he asked. "If you surrender at once, your life will be spared." The great sage, who had no heart left for the fight, was running as fast as he could. As he approached the mouth of the cave, he came up against Marshals Tang Sanzang, Yao, and Li, as well as Generals Gao Xin and Zijian blocking his way at the head of their armies. "Where are you going, damn monkey?" they asked, and the great sage hastily squeezed his gold-banded cudgel till it was the size of an embroidery needle and hid it in his ear. Then he shook himself, turned into a sparrow, flew up into a tree, and perched on one of its branches. The 6 sworn brothers looked for him very hard, but could find him nowhere, so they all shouted in unison, "The monkey fiend has escaped! The monkey fiend has escaped!" As they were shouting, the true Lord Erlang arrived and asked them, "Brothers, where had you chased him to when he disappeared? We had him surrounded here just now, but he vanished." Erlang opened his phoenix eyes until they were quite round and looked about him. He saw that the great sage had changed himself into a sparrow and was perched on a branch, so he put off his magical appearance, threw down his divine trident, and took the pellet bow from his waist. Then he shook himself, changed into a kite, spread his wings, and swooped in to attack. As soon as the great sage saw this, he took off and turned himself into a big cormorant, soaring up into the sky. Erlang saw him, and with a quick shake of his feathers and a twist of his body, he transformed himself into a crane and pierced the clouds as he tried to catch him. The great sage landed on a mountain stream and, changing into a fish, plunged into the water. Erlang, who had pursued him to the bank of the stream, could see no trace of him. "That macaque must have gone into the water and changed himself into some kind of fish or shrimp," he thought. "I'll transform myself again, then I'll get him." He turned into a fish hawk and soared above the lower reaches of the stream and the first waves of the sea. He waited there for a time. Meanwhile, the great sage, who was in the form of a fish, swam with the stream until he noticed a bird flying above him. It was quite like a blue kite, except its feathers were not blue. It was quite like an egret, but it had no crest on its head, and it was quite like a stork, but its legs were not red. "That must be what Erlang turned himself into while waiting for me," he thought, turned around quickly and went away. "The fish who turned around," thought Erlang when he saw this. It's like a carp, but its tail isn't red. It's like a mandarin fish, but I can't see the pattern on its scales. It's like a snakehead, but without a star on its head. It's like a bream, but it has no needles on its gills. Why did it turn around the moment it saw me? It must be that monkey transformed. He swooped down and snapped at the great sage with his beak. The great sage leapt out of the water, turned into a water snake, swam to the bank, and slid into the grass. Failing to catch the fish in his beak, Erlang saw a snake jump out of the water and realized it was the great sage. He changed himself at once into a red-crested gray crane and stretched out his long beak like a pair of pointed pincers to eat up the water snake. The snake gave a jump and became a bustard standing stiffly on a smart weed-covered bank. When Erlang saw that he had turned himself into so low a creature, for the bustard is the lowest and lewdest of birds, not caring whether it mates with phoenix, eagle, or crow, he kept his distance, reverted to his own body, went away to fetch and load his pellet bow, and knocked him flying with a single shot. The great sage seized the chance as he rolled down the precipice to crouch there and turn himself into a temple to a local god. He opened his mouth wide to look like the entrance to the temple and turned his teeth into the doors. He made his tongue into a statue of a god and his eyes into windows and lattice. He could not tuck his tail away, so he stuck it up behind him as a flagpole. When Erlang came to the foot of the precipice, he could not see the bustard he had shot over, and anxiously opened his phoenix eyes. He looked carefully around and saw the temple with his flagpole at its back. It must be that monkey over there, he observed with a smile. He's trying to fool me again. I've seen temples before, but never one with the flagpole at the back. I'm sure it's that beast up to his tricks again. If he'd managed to lure me in, he'd been able to get me with a single bite. Of course I won't go in. I'll smash his windows with my fists, then I'll kick his door down. Vicious, really vicious, thought the great sage with horror when he heard him say this. Those doors are my teeth, and the windows are my eyes, and if he smashes his teeth and bashes in my eyes, what sort of state will that leave me in? With a tiger leap, he disappeared into the sky. The true Lord Erlang rushed around wildly, but he could only see his 6 sworn brothers, who crowded round him and asked, "Elder brother, did you catch the great sage?" "That monkey turned himself into a temple to fool me," he replied with a laugh. "Just when I was going to smash his windows and kick his door, he gave a jump and vanished without a trace. Strange, very strange." They were all astonished, and though they looked all around, they could see no sign of him. "Brothers, you patrol this area while I go look for him above," said Erlang, and with a quick jump he was riding a cloud in mid-air. When he saw Heavenly King Li holding high the fiend-detecting mirror and standing with Nezra at the edge of a cloud, the true Lord asked, "Your Heavenly Majesty, have you seen that Monkey King?" "He hasn't come up here. I've been keeping a lookout for him with this mirror," the Heavenly King replied. The true Lord Erlang then told him how he had used transformations and magic to capture the monkey hordes. "He changed into a temple," Erlang went on, "but he got away just when I was going to hit him." On hearing this, Heavenly King Li turned the field-detecting mirror in all 4 directions, then said with a laugh, "Hurry away, true Lord, hurry away. The monkey made himself invisible to get through the encirclement, and he's gone to your palace, Guanjiangkao." Erlang took his divine trident and returned to Guanjiangkao in pursuit. The great sage had already arrived there, changed himself into the likeness of the god Erlang with a shake of his body, put away his cloud, and gone into the temple. The demon judges did not realize who he really was, so they all kowtowed to welcome him. He took his seat in the middle of the temple and inspected the offerings. The beef, mutton, and pork presented by one Li Hu, the ex-voto promised by Zhang Long, the letter from a Zhao Jai asking for a son, and one Queen Bing's prayer for recovery from illness. As he was looking around, it was announced that another Lord Erlang had arrived. All the demon judges hurried to look, and they were all astonished. The true Lord Erlang asked, "Has a so-called great sage equal in heaven been here?" "We haven't seen any great sages," they replied. "Only another god who's looking around inside." The true Lord rushed in through the gate, and as soon as the great sage saw him, he reverted to his own appearance and said, "There's no point in shouting, sir. This temple's mine now." The true lord raised his double-bladed trident and swung at the Monkey King's head, but the Monkey King dodged the blow by magic, shook his embroidery needle, shook it until it was thick as a bowl, and rushed forward to meet the attack. Shouting and yelling, they fought their way out through the gates and went on fighting through the mists and clouds all the way back to the mountain of flowers and fruit. The 4 heavenly kings and all their soldiers were so alarmed that they kept an even tighter guard. Marshals Tang and Zhang and the others came to meet the true lord and combined their efforts to surround the handsome Monkey King, but of this no more for now. After the strong-armed Demon King had sent the true Lord Erlang and his 6 sworn brothers with their troops to capture the fiend, he had gone back to heaven to report. He found the Jade Emperor, the Buddhist Guanyin, the Queen Mother, and all his immortal ministers in conference. Although Erlang has just joined the fight, we have had no reports on it all day, the Jade Emperor said. Guanyin put her hands together and replied, "May I suggest that your majesty go out through the southern gate of heaven with Lord Laozi to see for yourself what is happening?" "A good idea," said the emperor, and he went by chariot with Laozi, the Queen Mother, and all the immortal ministers to the southern gate of heaven. Here they were met by a number of heavenly soldiers and strong men. When the gates were opened and they looked into the distance, they saw that the heavenly host was spread all around in a net. Heavenly King Li and Neza were standing in mid-air with the fiend-detecting mirror, and Erlang was struggling with the great sage within the encircling ring. The Bodhisattva addressed Laozi and asked, "What do you think of the god Erlang I recommended? He really does have divine powers. He's just got that great sage cornered, and all he has to do now is catch him. If I give him a little help now, he will certainly be able to do it." "What weapon would you use, Bodhisattva? How could you help him?" Laozi asked. "I'll drop that pure vase of willow twigs on the monkey's head. Even if it doesn't kill him, it will knock him off balance and enable the little sage to catch him." "That vase of yours is made of porcelain," Laozi replied, "and if you hit the target, that will be fine. But if it were to miss his head and smash into his armed club, it would be shattered. Just hold your hand while I give him a little help." "What sort of weapon do you have?" the Bodhisattva asked, and Lord Laozi replied, "I've got one all right." He pulled up his sleeve and took a bracelet off his right arm. "This weapon," he said, "is made of tempered steel, to which I have added a magic elixir. It preserves my miraculous essence, can transform itself, it is proof against fire and water, and can snare anything. One of its names is Diamond Jade, and the other is Diamond Noose. When I went out through the Hands Pass some years ago to turn into a foreigner and become a Buddha, I had a great deal to thank it for. It's the best protection at any time. Just watch while I throw it down and hit him." As soon as he had finished speaking, he threw it down from outside the heavenly gate, and it fell into the camp on the mountain of flowers and fruit, hitting the Monkey King neatly on the head. The Monkey King was too preoccupied with fighting the 7 sages to notice this weapon falling on him from heaven, and when it struck him on the forehead, he lost his balance and stumbled, then picked himself up and started to run. The slim dog of the god Erlang caught up with him and bit him on the calf, bringing him down again. As he lay on the ground, he cursed at the dog. "You don't bother your own master, damn you. Why you pick on me to bite?" He rolled over and tried unsuccessfully to get up, but the 7 sages all held him down, roped him, and put a sickle-shaped blade against his collarbone to prevent him from making any more transformations. Lord Laozi then recovered his Diamond Jade and invited the Jade Emperor, Guanyin, the Queen Mother, and all the immortal ministers to return to the Hall of Miraculous Mist. Down below, Heavenly King Li and the 4 other heavenly kings assembled their troops and pulled up the stockade. They went over to congratulate the little sage and said, "It was all thanks to you, little sage." "No, it was thanks to the great blessings of His Celestial Majesty and the might of all the gods. It was nothing I did," replied the little sage. "No time to talk now, elder brother," said the 4 marshals Tang, Zhang, Yao, and Li. "Let's take this wretch up to heaven to see the Jade Emperor and ask what is to be done with him." "Worthy brothers," Erlang replied, "you never received any heavenly commission, so it would not be right for you to see the Jade Emperor. The heavenly soldiers can escort him while I go up there with the heavenly kings to report back. You should comb this mountain with your troops, and when you finish, go back to Guanji Kao. When I've asked for our rewards, I'll come back and we can celebrate together." The 4 marshals and the 2 generals accepted their orders, and the rest mounted their clouds and went to heaven triumphantly singing victory songs. Before long, they were outside the Hall of Universal Brightness. The heavenly teachers reported to the throne that the 4 great heavenly kings and the rest of them had captured the monkey devil, the great sage equaling heaven, and they were now waiting to be summoned. The Jade Emperor then issued an edict ordering the strong-armed Demon King and the heavenly soldiers to march him to the Demon Beheading Tower, where the wretch was to have his body chopped to mincemeat. Goodness! The bully and the cheat now meets with a bitter punishment. The heroic spirit must now come to an end. If you don't know what happened to the Monkey King's life, then listen to the explanation in the next installment.